Close your eyes and imagine a world where no storm can shake you, no insult can break you, and no loss can rob you of peace. Tonight we journey through over 2,000 years of wisdom, the story of Stoicism, a philosophy that teaches not just how to live, but how to remain unshakable in the face of life's storms. Close your eyes now and let your mind drift far away from the noise of today. Imagine the warm sunlight of ancient Athens spilling across marble streets, the faint hum of conversations carried on the wind, and the scent of olive trees mixing with the salty air from the Aegean Sea. We begin our journey here, over 2,000 years ago, with a man who had lost everything, and yet in that loss found the very thing he would give to the world. His name was Zeno of Citium, a merchant from the island of Cyprus. In those days, the sea was both a road to fortune and a path to ruin. Zeno had known wealth, ships laden with goods, bright fabrics, and precious cargo. But one day fate turned its hand. His ship wrecked, his cargo sank, and the waves swallowed everything he owned. He arrived in Athens with nothing in his pockets, only the clothes on his back and the sound of the ocean still in his ears. Most men in his place might have cursed the sea, cursed their luck, and clung to their losses. But Zeno did something different. He walked through the city streets searching not for gold, but for wisdom. They say that he wandered into a small bookseller's shop, picked up a book about Socrates, and began to read. He was struck by the calm, unshakable strength of this man who had faced death with serenity. It was as if the words themselves whispered to him, "What you have lost is not who you are." Zeno asked the bookseller where he could meet a man like Socrates, and he was pointed toward a philosopher named Crates. Zeno became his student, but he did not stop there. He studied with many teachers, learning different schools of thought, the sharp questioning of the cynics, the rational discipline of the academics, the measured thought of the Megarians. Piece by piece he gathered fragments of wisdom until a new picture began to form in his mind. It was around the year 300 BC when Zeno began to teach his own philosophy. He chose not to gather his students inside the walls of an academy or the columns of a temple. Instead, he stood in the open air under the painted porch, the Stoa Poikila, in the heart of the Athenian marketplace. Here merchants haggled over goods, children ran past with laughter, and travelers from distant lands brought stories of wars and wonders. In this place of life's constant movement, Zeno spoke of stillness. He taught that the true wealth of a person lies not in coins or possessions, but in virtue, in the strength to act with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control. Everything else, he said, is not entirely in our power. Fortune changes, ships sink, empires fall, and the applause of others fades like smoke in the air. But your character, the way you choose to respond to life, is yours to command. People began to gather under the Stoa, drawn by the simplicity and power of his word. They were not cloaked in riddles, nor hidden in long, winding arguments. Zeno's lessons were like clear water, refreshing, steady, and open to all. Farmers, merchants, soldiers, even slaves came to listen. He taught them that peace does not depend on what happens outside you, but on what you cultivate inside. Zeno's own life was proof. Here was a man who had been stripped of wealth and security, yet stood taller for it. When the winds of fate tore down his sails, he had not been broken. He had been set on a truer course. He showed others that misfortune could be a gift if it stripped away what does not matter and left you with what does. As the years passed, his philosophy began to take form. He spoke of the universe as a living, rational whole, guided by a divine order, something the Stoics would later call the logos. To live well, he said, was to live in harmony with this order, to align your will with the nature of things, accepting what comes as part of the greater plan. Pain, loss, and hardship were not punishments from the gods, but threads in the vast tapestry of existence. We cannot always see their place in the pattern, but we can trust that they belong. He told his students that while storms may rage around you, you can anchor yourself through reason and virtue. If your ship is tossed at sea, you do not control the wind or the waves, but you do control your hands on the tiller. If insult comes, you can choose not to be wounded by it. If fortune leaves you, you can remain unshaken, because what is truly yours, your character, your mind, your integrity, cannot be stolen. And so under that painted porch, the seeds of Stoicism were planted. It was not a philosophy born in quiet gardens or secluded retreats, but in the center of life itself, in the noise, the trade, the clamor, the constant change. It was here, among the people, that Zeno's words took root, and from here they would spread across the ancient world, carried by voices and hearts that found in them a new kind of freedom. When you picture that scene now, you might feel the warm stone beneath your feet, the sunlight on your skin, the hum of life around you. And somewhere in that crowd, perhaps you see Zeno, tall, calm, speaking with the steady certainty of a man who has already faced loss and learned not to fear it. You hear him telling you that life will give and take, but it can never take what is truly you. And in that moment you understand why his shipwreck was not the end of his journey, but the beginning. As you rest here in this thought, the world of ancient Athens begins to fade, and the calm certainty of Zeno's voice follows you into a deeper stillness, preparing you for the next chapter in the long story of Stoicism. The streets of Athens grow quieter now in your mind, as if the chatter of the marketplace has softened into the background. You still see Zeno beneath the painted porch, his calm voice carrying through the warm air, but this time his words seem to linger, circling around a question that every person in the crowd has brought with them. What is it, they wonder, that makes life truly good? Not just pleasant for a moment, not just lucky for a season, but good in a way that cannot be stolen by the shifting winds of fate. Zeno begins to answer, and as he speaks, the philosophy of Stoicism takes on its shape. He tells them that everything in life falls into two simple categories, the things we can control and the things we cannot. So much of human misery, he explains, comes from confusing the two. We spend our days straining after the things that lie beyond our grasp. Fortune, fame, the opinions of others, the outcomes of uncertain events, and in doing so we overlook the only things that are truly ours, our thoughts, our choices, our actions. He invites the people to imagine holding their life in the palm of their hand. Most of what they think is theirs, their possessions, their health, their reputation, is like water. Try to clench your fist around it, it'll slip away. Only a small stone remains solid and unyielding. Your power to choose how to respond to whatever comes, that, Zeno says, is the heart of freedom. The crowd listens, some leaning in, some crossing their arms as they try to weigh these words against their own struggles. One man thinks of his failing business, another of the illness in his family, another of a friend who betrayed him. Are they really to believe that peace can be found even here, in the shadow of loss? Zeno smiles as if he can hear their thoughts. He speaks of virtue, not as a distant ideal for saints and scholars, but as the living core of a human life well lived. Wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control. These are not luxuries, he says, but necessities. They are the four pillars on which the mind can rest even when the walls of fortune crumble around it. Without them, even the richest man can be poor. With them, even the poorest can be rich. He explains that to live with wisdom is to see the world as it truly is, not clouded by wishful thinking or fear. To live with courage is to face hardship without flinching, knowing that fear changes nothing but your own strength. To live with justice is to act honorably toward others, not because it is profitable, but because it is right. And to live with self-control is to master your desires and impulses, to be the ruler of your own heart. The philosophy is simple in its outline, but in practice it is demanding. It asks a man to look at a storm and say, I cannot stop the rain, but I can walk through it without bitterness. It asks a woman to see an insult and say, I cannot make another speak kindly, but I can choose not to be wounded by their words. It is the discipline of meeting the world on its own terms, not resisting reality, but shaping oneself to live well within it. As the painted porch fills with the soft shadows of late afternoon, Zeno speaks of harmony with nature. Not the forests and rivers alone, but the greater nature of the universe itself, the vast orderly whole of which each person is a part. Everything that happens, he says, is part of this order. We may not understand why a particular thread in the tapestry is dark, but we can trust that it belongs to the pattern. Resisting it is like pulling against the current of a river. It only exhausts us. Acceptance is not weakness. It's alignment with the truth of things. A young man in the crowd asks whether this means they must simply endure whatever comes, never striving to change their lot. Zeno shakes his head gently. No, he says, we are not passive passengers on the ship of life. We steer where we can, and we act where it is right to. But we do so without the illusion that the winds obey us. We set our course, but if the storm blows us elsewhere, we adjust our sails and carry on without despair. This, he explains, is the paradox at the center of Stoicism. By accepting what you cannot control, you gain greater power over your life. By releasing your grip on outcomes, you can place your full strength into actions. Your peace no longer hangs by the fragile thread of circumstance. As the day fades, the marketplace begins to quiet. Merchants pack away their wares, the clatter of pottery fades, and the smell of evening bread drifts through the air. The people around the Stoa are left with a sense that something has shifted inside. They came seeking a way to secure their happiness, and they leave with the understanding that happiness was never the right goal. It is virtue that must be sought. Happiness is the shadow virtue casts. You feel this truth settling into you as well. It is not a call to retreat from the world, nor a promise that life will spare you its storms. It is a reminder that the heart of your freedom, your dignity, your strength lies in a space no one can touch. The space between what happens to you and how you choose to meet. That choice is yours, now and always, and in that choice lies the peace that no fortune or misfortune can take away. And so with the teachings of Zeno still echoing softly, you drift deeper into the night, ready to follow the philosophy as it travels from the porches of Athens to the palaces and battlefields of Rome. The scene in Athens slowly fades, like a candle dimming in the quiet of night, and in its place another world begins to form. The streets grow broader, the buildings taller, the air filled with the deep, steady rhythm of marching. You hear the clang of armor, the voices of senators in marble halls, the murmur of markets now richer, louder, and grander. The heart of the ancient world has shifted from Greece to Rome, and with it, the philosophy born under the painted porch makes its long journey west. By the time Stoicism arrives here, Rome is no longer just a city. It is an empire, stretching its influence over seas and mountains, holding within its borders people from every corner of the known world. Power, wealth, and ambition fill the air like incense. Yet beneath the marble and gold, life in Rome is no more certain than it was in the Athenian marketplace. Wars rage on the frontiers, politics turn allies into enemies overnight, and fortunes rise and crumble with the favor of the crowd. In such a place, the need for a philosophy of steadiness and virtue is as great as ever. It is here that Stoicism finds some of its most famous voices, men whose words will echo through history. One is Seneca, the philosopher-statesman whose life is a delicate dance between the ideals of Stoicism and the dangerous currents of imperial politics. Another is Epictetus, once a slave who proves that the chains on a person's body are nothing compared to the chains they place on their own mind. And then there is Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, who rules the vast Roman Empire with one hand while writing words in his private journal that will become a guide for millions across the centuries. Seneca lives in a world where being too honest can mean death, yet he holds fast to the Stoic principle that the good life is measured not by its length or luxury, but by its virtue. He writes letters to his friends filled with reflections on how to master anger, how to live with purpose, and how to greet death without fear. To him, wealth is something to use wisely, not to cling to, for it can vanish in an instant, and so can life itself. He reminds his readers that every day is a bonus, a gift to be lived fully, as tomorrow is never promised. Epictetus teaches in a quieter setting, far from the palaces of power. Born into slavery, he endured hardship that would have broken many, yet he speaks with a calm authority that makes men listen. Freedom, he says, is not given by the law or by a master. It is found in controlling one's own mind. You cannot stop illness, loss, or insult from arriving at your door, but you can decide how you will meet them. In his school, students learn that life's troubles are like sparring partners, sent to strengthen you. You do not curse them, you thank them for the training. And then there is Marcus Aurelius, the emperor himself, who carries the weight of the known world on his shoulders. By day, he commands armies, settles disputes, and navigates the shifting tides of politics. By night, he turns inward, writing in the quiet solitude of his tent or palace. His words are not for the public, they are reminders to himself. He writes of meeting arrogance with humility, of remaining steady amid chaos, of living each day as if it were his last. He reminds himself that even the most powerful man is subject to nature's laws, and that in time all names are washed away by the river of time. In Rome, Stoicism is not an abstract philosophy confined to the lecture. It lives in the Senate, in the training yards of soldiers, in the homes of merchants, and in the hearts of those who have little power but seek to live with dignity. It becomes a way for generals to face defeat without despair, for slaves to endure injustice without losing their humanity, for rulers to resist the corruption of absolute power. It is a philosophy that demands action, not merely thought, a call to live each moment in alignment with virtue, regardless of the cost. Yet it is not an easy path. Seneca struggles with his role in the court of the volatile Emperor Nero, torn between survival and principle. Epictetus teaches that some will always prefer comfort to freedom of the soul. Marcus Aurelius must send soldiers into battle, knowing that virtue does not shield anyone from the pain of loss. They are human, with their own flaws and contradictions, yet they return again and again to the core of Stoicism. Control what you can, accept what you cannot, and live in harmony with reason and nature. And so the philosophy that began with a shipwrecked merchant in Athens grows stronger in the heart of an empire. It adapts to new challenges, speaks through new voices, yet remains rooted in the same truth, that peace comes not from bending the world to your will, but from aligning your will with the world as it is. It offers a compass in a land where power changes hands in an instant, where life is as fragile as a flame in the wind. As night deepens over Rome, you can imagine Seneca at his desk by lamplight, Epictetus speaking to a small circle of students, Marcus Aurelius looking out at the city from the high walls of his palace. Each in his own way is practicing the same art, the art of living well in a world that offers no guarantees. And as their voices fade into the quiet, you feel the thread of Stoicism stretching across time, unbroken, leading you onward to the next chapter of its long and steady journey. The grandeur of Rome begins to soften in your mind, its marble columns and triumphal arches fading into the quieter streets and open fields where ordinary life unfolds. The sound of marching soldiers is replaced by the rhythm of daily work. The steady beat of a hammer in the hands of a craftsman, the creak of a merchant's cart rolling over stone, the gentle splash of water being drawn from a well. Here, away from the halls of emperors and the lectures of philosophers, Stoicism breathes in a different way. It is no longer only the subject of letters, journals, or speeches. It is a living practice, woven into the fabric of daily life. For the Stoics, wisdom was never meant to be locked away in books or confined to the minds of the learned. It was meant to walk the streets, to share meals, to meet hardship at the doorstep and greet it like an old acquaintance. A philosophy that could not be lived in the market or the workshop was no philosophy at all. The teachings that Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius spoke of were not lofty riddles for the elite. They were tools that anyone, whether rich or poor, free or enslaved, could pick up and use. Imagine a soldier returning from the frontier, his body tired from long marches, his mind haunted by the sights of war. He remembers Epictetus's words, "Oh, you may not control what has happened, but you can choose your response." In the stillness of night, he repeats this to himself until the restless anger inside him begins to ease. Picture a merchant whose business has just failed after years of careful work. The marketplace where he once stood proudly now feels like a place of shame. But then he recalls the Stoic teaching that fortune is borrowed, never owned. What has been taken was never truly his. Only his character remains, and that is enough to rebuild. Or think of a mother waiting for news of her son serving far away. The uncertainty gnaws at her, yet she remembers Marcus Aurelius's quiet reminder, "But do not let the future trouble you. You will meet it if you must, with the same reason you use today." She breathes, and in that moment she finds a small measure of peace. The beauty of Stoicism lies in its adaptability. It does not demand that life be free from pain or trouble. It teaches how to walk steadily through both. A cracked roof, a sick child, a lost friend, an insult from a stranger. These are not signs that the world is against you. They are part of the world's nature as much as the sunrise or the falling rain. And while you may not control when the storm comes, you can always decide whether to stand firm or to be swept away by it. In workshops and kitchens, in ships crossing dangerous waters, in fields where the sun beats down for hours, people quietly practice this art. They pause before speaking, asking themselves if their words will serve justice. They bite back anger when insulted, not out of weakness, but because they refuse to let another person's temper dictate their own. They face illness with courage, knowing that the body may fail, but the spirit can remain strong. Even the smallest acts become part of the practice. Choosing honesty in a trade, even if a lie would bring more profit. Offering kindness to a neighbor, not because it will be returned, but because it is right. Rising each morning not with the hope that the day will be easy, but with the readiness to meet whatever comes. The Stoics understood that philosophy is tested not in the comfort of good times, but in the press of difficulty. It is easy to speak of virtue when the table is full and the sky is clear. It is harder to live it when hunger knocks or the clouds gather dark. And yet, this is where Stoicism shines brightest. It invites people to see each hardship as an opportunity, not to deny the pain, but to use it. A delay in the market is a lesson in patience. An unfair accusation is a chance to practice integrity. A personal loss is a test of resilience. Each event, whether joyful or sorrowful, becomes a part of the training that shapes the soul. And so the philosophy spreads, not through grand proclamations, but through quiet example. A neighbor notices the calm of a man who has just lost his farm and wonders how he does not rage against fate. A child grows up watching her mother meet every challenge with dignity and begins to imitate her without even knowing it. The strength of Stoicism passes not only through words, but through lives lived with steady courage. Over time, these small acts, repeated in countless homes and streets, give Stoicism a permanence that outlasts a fall of empire. Long after statues crumble and books are lost, the essence remains in the way people carry themselves, in the choice to meet life's uncertainty with calm, to face its trials with courage, and to hold fast to virtue even when no one is watching. As the evening deepens, you can almost see these moments. The soldier setting down his sword with a quiet sigh, the merchant sweeping his empty stall and locking the door with steady hands, the mother lighting a lamp and sitting by the window with a heart at peace. They are not famous, their names will not be remembered in history, but in them the philosophy lives just as brightly as it did in the minds of the great Stoics. And as you watch this gentle procession of ordinary lives shaped by extraordinary wisdom, you begin to feel it yourself, that same calm readiness to meet whatever comes. The story of Stoicism moves on, but its heart has already taken root here, in the everyday moments where life is truly lived. The steady hum of daily life begins to fade, and with it, the golden age of Stoicism slowly drifts into the background. The bustling markets of Athens, the disciplined streets of Rome, the quiet resolve in the hearts of soldiers, merchants, and mothers, all of it begins to dim, like the last embers of a fire at the end of a long night. Empires rise, but they also fall, and the Roman world, once so vast and sure of itself, begins to crack along its edges. New ideas, new faiths, and new powers emerge, and in their light, the voice of Stoicism grows quiet. It is not that the philosophy is refuted or proven false. Rather, the great stage on which it once stood is being rebuilt into something different. The rise of Christianity sweeps through the empire, offering a vision of life, virtue, and salvation that speaks powerfully to a changing world. Stoicism, with its call to self-mastery and inner fortitude, shares some of the same values, yet it lacks the promise of divine grace and eternal reward that so many now long for. Slowly, the painted porch of Zeno and the meditations of Marcus Aurelius become less central to public life. The great schools close their doors. The voices of Stoic teachers no longer fill the public square. The writings of Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus are copied and kept, but they are no longer the guiding star for the majority. Philosophy itself, once a public calling, retreats into quieter corners, monasteries, private studies, the libraries of those who still find value in the old ways. And yet Stoicism does not truly die. Like a stream disappearing beneath the earth, it continues to flow out of sight, nourishing ideas and shaping lives without always being named. Some of its principles blend into the moral teachings of the new Christian order, the call to live with humility, to endure suffering without bitterness, to place virtue above material wealth. These echoes remain even if the name of Stoic is spoken less often. There are still individuals who find in these teachings a kind of anchor. A scholar might open a worn scroll and read Epictetus's reminder that it is not things themselves that trouble us, but our judgments about them. and feel its truth just as sharply as any Athenian student did centuries before. A monk wrestling with the hardships of fasting and prayer might recognize in Marcus Aurelius's quiet reflections a familiar discipline of mind. The philosophy survives not through grand schools now, but through the solitary act of one person passing a book to another, of one mind quietly shaping itself in the image of reason and virtue. The decline is not a sudden collapse, but a gradual softening, as if the world is turning its attention elsewhere. The old porches crumble, the marble libraries gather dust, and yet somewhere a candlelight still falls across the pages of Stoic. It becomes a private companion rather than a public banner, a set of ideas carried like a hidden talisman, known only to those who seek it out. Centuries pass this way. Wars are fought, kingdoms rise and fall, and still the core truths remain, waiting patiently for the world to listen again. Stoicism's voice is quiet, but it is not lost. It lingers in unexpected places, in the advice of a wise parent telling a child not to worry over what cannot be changed, in the example of a humble craftsman who works with care and dignity no matter the pay, in the quiet strength of someone who suffers yet does not complain. Even in its decline, there is a kind of victory in this persistence. The philosophy was never about being in fashion, it was about being true, and truth once discovered does not vanish simply because the world has moved on. The painted porch may have been left behind, the scrolls may be tucked away, but the spirit of Stoicism remains like an ember, ready to spark again when the time is right, and so the story moves forward in shadows. Those who still read the old masters carry their wisdom like seeds, not knowing if they will ever take root again. In the monasteries, the scriptoriums, the private libraries, the words wait. They wait through plagues and invasions, through the fall of cities and the birth of new nations, through centuries where human life is as fragile as a candle flame in the wind. But history is never the world changes again and again, and the quiet endurance of Stoicism means that when the moment comes, it will not need to be reinvented, only rediscovered. And in that rediscovery, the voice that once echoed beneath the painted porch will rise again, ready to speak to a new generation in a new age, as if no time had passed at all. As you drift further into this long passage of time, you can almost hear that voice still, soft now, but steady, reminding those who will listen that the storms of history are nothing new, and that the heart of peace lies not in changing the world, but in mastering the self. The centuries of quiet endurance finally begin to break, like the first light touching the horizon after a long night. Stoicism, which had flowed unseen beneath the surface of history, starts to rise again. At first it emerges in small ripples, a quote rediscovered in an old book, a philosopher's words woven into the lessons of a modern teacher, a line from Marcus Aurelius carried like a secret strength through the trials of a single life. And then, slowly but surely, it begins to gather momentum, until once again it finds its way into the public square. The world it returns to is very different from the one it left. The empires of stone are gone, replaced by a civilization of glass, steel, and glowing screen. Wars still exist, though they are fought with weapons that the ancient Stoics could never have imagined. The markets are still crowded, though now they stretch across the entire globe in a web of invisible connection. And while many live with comforts the ancients could not dream of, the human heart has not changed. It still fears loss, still chases what is beyond its control, still stumbles in the search for peace. Perhaps that is why Stoicism feels, to modern ears, not like an ancient relic, but like an urgent truth. The same words that once steadied sailors and soldiers now guide entrepreneurs, artists, students, and parents. The same principles that helped a slave endure hardship and an emperor govern justly are now used by soldiers returning from war, by athletes standing on the edge of competition, by ordinary people facing the quiet battles of daily life. Its revival is not driven by temples or schools this time, but by the curiosity of individuals who are hungry for something solid in a shifting world. A young person overwhelmed by the noise of social media and the pressure to prove themselves finds comfort in the reminder that other people's opinions are beyond their control. A business leader learns from the Stoics that failure is not the opposite of success, but a step along its path. A parent, tired from the chaos of life, discovers in Marcus Aurelius's journals the reassurance that even the most powerful men struggled with impatience and doubt. and that they found a way to keep going. Technology, so often blamed for distraction, becomes one of the very tools that spreads this old wisdom. The meditations of Marcus Aurelius are downloaded onto phones across the world. Seneca's letters are shared in online forums. Epictetus's teachings are quoted in podcasts and videos, reaching millions who might never have walked into a philosophy class. The words travel faster now, leaping across languages and borders, finding readers and listeners in every corner of the planet. And while some may approach Stoicism as a practical self-help guide, others go deeper, recognizing in it a philosophy of life, one that offers more than just quick solutions, but a foundation for living with integrity, resilience, and calm. Its core remains as it was in Zeno's day. Focus on what you can control, accept what you cannot, and live in harmony with reason and virtue. But now it also carries the proof of 2,000 years, proof that these ideas survive, adapt, and remain relevant, no matter how the world changes. You can see it in the small, personal moments of modern life. An athlete takes a deep breath before the final game, remembering that the outcome is not fully in their hands, only the effort they bring to it. A soldier facing the uncertainty of deployment repeats Epictetus's teaching that freedom is the power to control one's own mind. A student, anxious about the future, finds comfort in the thought that the present moment is the only place where life is truly lived. Even in the midst of modern chaos, Stoicism offers a kind of stillness, not the stillness of retreat, but the stillness of a ship's captain standing steady at the helm while the waves crash around them. The storms are different now, but the need for that steadiness is exactly the same. What makes this revival remarkable is that it is not limited to any one place or type of person. It is as present in the routines of a high-powered executive as it is in the quiet reflections of someone sitting alone in a small apartment. It speaks to those in moments of great crisis and to those in the slow grind of ordinary challenges. It requires no wealth, no special education, no approval from anyone else. The tools are available to all, just as they were in the markets of Athens and the streets of Rome. And so as Stoicism steps fully into the modern age, it carries with it the voices of its past. Zeno beneath the painted porch, Seneca at his desk, Epictetus speaking to his students, Marcus Aurelius writing by lamplight. Their words, preserved through the rise and fall of empires, now stand ready to guide a world that, despite all its changes, still wrestles with the same questions of how to live well, how to endure hardship, and how to find peace in the middle of uncertainty. The journey has come full circle. From a shipwrecked merchant in ancient Athens to the courts of emperors, to the humble lives of everyday Romans, through centuries of quiet endurance and into the restless heart of the modern world, Stoicism has walked beside humanity. It asks nothing more than your willingness to live by what is in your control, to let go of what is not, and to face each day with the courage and clarity of one who knows that the storms will come and that you are ready to meet them. As you let these thoughts settle, you may feel a quiet strength rising within you, the same strength that has carried countless souls through their darkest hours. And perhaps you realize now that you are not just listening to the history of Stoicism, you are stepping into it, becoming part of its living story, ready to carry it forward into tomorrow. And so as you drift into rest, remember, the world will always change, storms will always come, but within you lies a calm no tide can touch, the same calm that has carried Stoics through the ages and now will carry